Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm Evan No Shorty. Today, looking at a Scout's comic book, Banshees. It's another horror slasher kind of thing, which I love. You know this by now if you watch my reviews quite a lot. But of the ones I've read recently, like Black Tape and Harrower, this is my least favourite. Rather than dismissing it entirely, though, I'm going to go into some reasons why it didn't land the way I wanted it to. I'm going to start with the fact that I read this comic book, and then I was poking around online to try and find out some information about the people who made it, and I saw the synopsis for it, and the synopsis sounds amazing. It is Jennifer's Body meets Stand By Me, where a bunch of ghosts of murdered college students get together to get revenge on the serial killer who murdered them. Cool, I'm down with that. That sounds amazing. It's kind of odd, is I read the comic book and I didn't get a vibe of that at all. It doesn't lead me to believe that in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the ending of it, where I think they could have possibly gone that way, it seemed like they were more going to the basic shock value, and it didn't really work for me. And frustratingly, it's just not a great comic. When you get a brilliant idea for a story, where something is like, yeah, I generally like the idea of that, I'd love to know more about it, but your issue one experience is substandard art and kind of trope-laden, predictable writing, with some other issues as well. It doesn't matter how good the idea is, you're still stuck with the idea that it's not going to be well written and well presented. And fairly early on, it turned me off a little bit, because we have an issue of all of the victims of the serial killer are young college age, or university age in this country, girls, women for that matter. And there's a very brutal bit of violence against the young girl very early on, and she literally gets punched right in the mouth by a guy. And then, in a bit of bad writing, we see that he has a rope with a noose on it, but then the next shot, after you see it on the floor, he's got it around her neck, and then he throws it to the rotary ceiling fan to hang her. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool concept. But you don't really see much in the way of what happens between, you see the rope, and then she's got it around her neck, and he's trying to struggle away from him. And he's quite far behind, like a few paces behind her. And I just can't help but feel like, after you see her just literally get punched right in the mouth, you don't get to see how much of a struggle she puts up. You don't really get to see anything other than the victim of this violence. And I'm trying my best to kind of phrase this in like a more of a way than just being, that bugs me, but it honestly just kind of bugs me. There is some good writing in here, don't get me wrong. When we actually get to meet the main character of this story, we get conversation between her and her parents, and they use this to basically drop in the idea of the trauma that she's gone through and the kind of person she is and the relationship she has with her parents. When she meets her roommate, there's some really nice back and forth between them, where they go from kind of butting up against each other at the beginning, realising they've actually got a lot in common, but they're just personality-wise too different. And it's kind of nice that as like nuances to their characters, that they're not just instantly going to be friends or to become enemies. There's stuff to grow there, and I like that. But you also, the moment they're having Penn State, have this really weird close-up of what I imagine is a member of the custodial staff, who doesn't have any dialogue, he just grumbles a little bit. But it's a really obvious weird close-up of this person who is not engaged in anything to do with the story at all at this point, and he's also one of the most finely detailed, drawn characters that you see in the entire book. Now, I'm not saying that means this guy's going to be like some major character, or maybe even the bad guy, but he does feel very much like Chekhov's murderer at this point. You've got a bunch of other weird tropes in there as well. Like, they've got two lecturers you meet. One of whom is a short, slightly chubby, less conventionally attractive, and kind of grumpy lecturer who brooks no poo from any of his students. But you also kind of feel that he's really a bad guy, and he's probably useful down the line, and maybe if he does die, people feel bad, because it turns out he wasn't as bad as they thought he was. But then you've got the other lecturer who's a conventionally good-looking, slightly young gentleman, very charming, and probably had sexual relations with some of his students. And yeah, he's going to be the bad guy at some point, surely, because he's smarmy, and, you know, the power dynamic of that kind of relationship pretty much always makes you a bad guy in some way. So, again, I mean, I don't mind that they're doing this. I'd rather than have him as the good guy, but it still feels kind of predictable. All of it just feels like it's leading somewhere. And when you do get to the end of the comic book, where there is a jump scare kind of moment, and you realise, yes, this place is haunted by the ghosts of these various people, at no point do you feel like, oh, well, at least they're coming together and trying to do something now. It just feels like a jump scare at the end of a scene. And unfortunately, it's one of the few times where I can say I like the artwork. It's kind of nice. It uses moody shadows and nice layouts and POVs really effectively. But for the rest of the comic book, some of the characters are really poorly drawn. There's issues of anatomy and even perspective sometimes. And it feels like some stuff is rushed where it doesn't need to be, and other stuff, like I've already said, has had way too much time put into it to make it realise this is not just a random background character. I like the concept of this comic book. and if it was a slightly better creative team, I think I would really get behind it. But as it is, substandard writing, substandard art, unfortunately, is enough to me to think, yes, I really like this comic book. I'm totally going to give it a go. So yeah, I like horror and everything, but not this one, unfortunately. That's it for me for now, though. Keep an eye out for all the reviews. We've still got a couple things I want to read this week, so there's going to be at least one more, if not 2 extra reviews. Make sure to like and follow, subscribe, whatever buttons. Until I see you all again, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.